We gather on the ancestral lands of the Namkeg and Massachusetts people. We light this chalice in respect for the Indigenous stewards of this land and in reverence for the interdependence of all creation.
Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn here in Swampscott and also via our live stream. So good morning to all of those in cyberspace. I have a reading for us to hear in the spirit of prayer by an Indigenous elder, and he's also an Episcopal priest named Stephen Charleston. This is from Ladder to the Light. My ancestors valued silence. That is the room where the mind goes to think. The elders say it is not possible for people to make good choices if everyone is constantly talking. Renewal comes from deep within the kiva. It comes from within the sweat lodge. It is not just an intellectual notion about why we should try something new together. It is a physical invitation to experience that renewal firsthand. It is an organic experience, a chronicle of the human heart that stretches back through the millennia my ancestors lived on this land. It speaks in a language that is from the earth, from the creatures that share this life with us, and from the visions we have seen in the billowing clouds above us. To accept this exchange of spiritual insight, you will need to put down the idea that human beings are at the top of the spiritual food chain and open your mind to a world filled with spiritual presence. Now let us try to practice that chronicle of the human heart, the stillness and silence of the mind, so that we may better accept the gift of creation and be open to holy presence. In honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, which we observe tomorrow, and many of you get the day off. Enjoy that. I'm sharing a reading by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and some of you know her as the author of Braiding, Sweetgrass, which is an incredibly wonderful book about botany and ecology and Indigenous wisdom. And I want to thank Jim Olivetti for getting me the Serviceberry and recommending it to me, which is her book on abundance and reciprocity in the natural world. And I have a couple of excerpts. Now, the Serviceberry is known by different names, and it's just a delicious berry. So if you were wondering, it's called Saskatoon, Juneberry, Shadbush, Shadblow, Sugar Plum, Sarvis, and Serviceberry. I've never had one, to my knowledge. In a Serviceberry economy, I accept the gift from the tree and then spread that gift around with a dish of berries to my neighbor, who makes a pie to share with his friend, who feels so wealthy in food and friendship that he volunteers at the food pantry. You know how it goes. In contrast, if I were to buy a basket of berries in a market economy, the relationship ends with the exchange of money. Once I hand over my credit card, I have no further exchange with the clerk or the store. We're done. I own these berries now, and I can do with them as I like. The clerk, the corporation, and I, the customer, have a strictly material transaction. There is no making of community, only the trading of commodities. Many Indigenous peoples, including my Anishinaabe Anishinaabe relatives and my Haudenosaunee neighbors inherit what is known as a culture of gratitude, where lifeways are organized around recognition and responsibility for earthly gifts, both ceremonial and pragmatic. Our oldest teaching stories remind us that failure to show gratitude dishonors the gift and brings serious consequences. If you dishonor the beavers by taking too many, they will leave. If you waste the corn, you will go hungry. Enumerating the gifts you've received creates a sense of abundance, the knowing that you already have what you need. Recognizing enoughness is a radical act in an economy that is always urging us to consume more. Data tells the story that there are enough food calories on the planet for all 8 billion of us to be nourished, and yet people are starving. Imagine the outcome if we took only enough, if we each took only enough rather than far more than our share. The wealth and security we seem to crave could be met by sharing what we have. If our first response to the receipt of gifts is gratitude, then our second is reciprocity, to give a gift in return. What could I give these plants in return for their generosity? I could return the gift with a direct response, like weeding, or bringing water, or offering a song of thanks that sends appreciation out on the wind. I could make habitat for the solitary bees that fertilize those fruits. Or maybe I could take indirect action like donating to my local land trust so that more habitat for the gift givers will be saved. Speaking at a public hearing on land use, or making art that invites others into the web of reciprocity. I could reduce my carbon footprint, vote on the side of healthy land, advocate for farmland preservation, change my diet, hang my laundry in the sunshine. We live in a time when every choice matters. Gratitude and reciprocity are the currency of a gift economy, and they have the remarkable property of multiplying with every exchange, their energy concentrating as they pass from hand to hand, a truly renewable resource. The wisdom of Robin Wall Kimmerer. Here ends the reading.
Before this piece starts, I just want to give you a little background on it. So what you're about to hear is a Shoshone love song. The music itself is not indigenous, but the lyrics are from a native book of poetry. Of course, many of these authors were left unnamed just because of lack of documents and finding the people who sourced it. But it was from a book of Native American poetry, and this was just set to music. The Shoshone love song is not necessarily a song of romantic love, but a love of paternal love. So she, he, my heart's friend, was gestured towards the children of Indigenous people. The Indigenous people referenced in this poem are the Basin people. I couldn't necessarily find which basin they were a part of, but it was about the love for their children, especially, as they're traveling through, and especially in times of displacement, how their heart's friend in that period of time were their children. So that's what this song is about. I just wanted to give a little insight before you listen. Hope you enjoy.
beautiful. My goodness. It's prepping season for New Englanders. As we feel the air turn colder and our animal selves know what's coming, winter. We are also aware that grocery prices are still rising. I noticed eggs have not gone down at all, and egg producers' profits were way above what they were last year, so no comment on that. We're in the midst of a government shutdown. Tariffs will affect prices and availability of products, and mindful people are stocking up. Storms, too, have us thinking about batteries and solar chargers and water containers. I have this little crank radio that I have to still figure out how to use. I think I got it as a freebie from, a public radio station. And like you, I try to find a reasonable balance between worry and doom forecasting and false positivity that can be an inducement to denial on the other end of the spectrum. The mystic Julian of Norwich said, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." And yes, I agree with her in the ultimate existential sense. But in the meanwhile, I'm buying more beans than usual and laying them in store. I live at the end of a street in Lynn, down a little hill, and it's a wonderful little UU colony in that area of Lynn, actually. I have frequent interactions with my next-door neighbors on both sides, and across the street and around the corner. I have the phone number for pretty much everyone in the area. We alert each other by text to unusual goings-on, and we look after each other's homes. If someone leaves town, sometimes a pet gets out, and we all look together for it. I find that it's easier for people these days to be more apprised about what's going on across the world than it is about what's going on across their street. I might be right. I don't know. It depends. Your mileage may vary. Yeah, she goes like this. I also have a hyper-local food economy in the form of what we call porch bagels. That's kind of the shorthand. But it's porch Tupperware and deliveries. I make soup and share it with Mary and Peter. Mary loves my borscht, so when I have time to roast beets, I get some of that going for her. And Mary Keen Galtieri, this is, will drop off eggs from her girls, her chickens, and leave them on my porch. Our neighbor George, right across the street from Mary and Peter, will make stew or boil dinner or bake some muffins, and he leaves us a plate. I feed his dog. He has a fairly cantankerous dog, so she gets kibble literally thrown through the window. Or I might deliver burritos, and then again, bagels. I do not realize how frequently we exchange our Tupperware until one day I'll come home to find a large bag full of the empties on my porch, returns from all of those parts of the gift economy. Our local community relationships are a form of wealth. Our local connections with real people who we know in person, whose numbers we have in our phones, whose faces we see. They're not a guarantee that crisis won't affect us or that tragedy won't strike, but they're not just a potential source of practical resources, they're also a source of joy and spiritual energy, and the reminder that we're not alone in the world. So if the zombie apocalypse should come, by which I think I mean a very dramatic disruption due to climate crisis, or if the grid goes down, or who knows what else, who will feed whom? With whom would you bunk up? The gift economy that Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about in her book is good common sense, practically and emotionally. It builds relationships and mutual respect. It creates joy, as I said, and a sense of competence, which is really spiritually empowering. When we notice how much the earth provides. Oh, my goodness, I have a little issue here with my printer. When we notice how much the earth provides, We stop and savor and appreciate the bounty of the serviceberry that grows. That's good spiritual practice. It's good spiritual hygiene. And when we pay more attention to what is given and what we have and can share, channels of energy flow, and we have better opportunity to access our creative powers, which is very, very important to survival. When we pay more attention to what is not available, how prices are rising, what the government is defunding and taking away, what the winter will deprive us of, that fear and that anger can really tighten us, sap our strength, and deprive us of that creative spirit that gives us the ability to find solutions together. I'm very aware these days of emotional contagion and what happens when people gather not to problem solve, but to engage in despair. We're cooked. America is over. I know it's tempting, but it doesn't feed anyone. It's not productive, and it's a blockage. In the gift economy of Indigenous societies, the successful and most highly regarded one is the one who demonstrates the most generosity, and not just like performative philanthropy, where you get to dress up in a designer gown and pose for the cameras and give your money and have a big fancy dinner, but real generosity, giving something that is of value to you, to others. That's the opposite of the consumer economy, which presumes that the more wealth and possessions one accumulates, the more secure one is, because it's just not true. You can have all the dough in the world and offshore accounts galore, but if your power goes out during an ice storm and the roads are closed and the baby is coming, good luck. Even with a generator, good luck. If there's no food in the store, money isn't very helpful. I mean, you get a certain distance in the black market, but having a community garden is helpful. Knowing how to fix things, having somewhere you can get to on foot, where you can get warm and share news with people who care about you. How many of you are within walking distance of this church? See, that's a form of wealth. Me too. It would be a long schlep. It's not that long. It's really not. I could get here. I love knowing that. The gift economy of sharing and reciprocity, or mutual aid, is empowering because the energy of care and attention and provision is always flowing between the participants. Now, it's a very nice experience to sit and be served a dinner. I've done it, but if your life is spent receiving in this way, being privileged in this way, there is emotional and spiritual deprivation, a warping of the self, as it loses its sense of being able to serve and give back. I think it's a really bizarre, unexamined way of trading away our dignity. And I think about, what it's like to be constantly waited on and have everything provided for you. It's disempowering, first of all, and it really doesn't give you the ability to cope with reality. And I think about the young Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, who had that experience of being a young prince, and he realized at a fairly young age, wait a minute, I'm being totally sheltered from reality here. This is not the nature of reality, and so he left. The gift economy is creative. It's clever. It requires the getting and sharing of skills. And if you're watching online, Dory, I see you. Hello. I know some of our friends that we've talked about this with are watching this morning. Repairing clothing and appliances, for instance, instead of throwing them away. Free cycle and sharing collectives. Language or writing tutoring exchanges. I'll teach you some English, you teach me some Spanish. Potlucks. Yay, potlucks. And potlatches, giveaways for people who share a certain sports interest or who have babies and have outgrown clothes. Sharing of certain hobby equipment, so forth. Alston Christmas. How many of you know what Alston Christmas is? Okay, yeah. Alston Christmas is September 1st. It's in the area where so many students live that when they all move out at the same time and a new crowd of students moves in, everybody puts their stuff out on the curb. And you can absolutely furnish your apartment that way. It's fantastic. I still have pieces that I obtained during Somerville's Alston Christmas, way back when. I'm interested in how to think creatively with others about how to live with less, how to share resources, how to adapt to what is happening and what may be coming. What makes sense? What would be good to let go of in terms of consumption and assumptions, such as everyone being able to afford their own roomy home and land, cars, multiple vehicles, and live independently for our entire lives. There are hopeful developments like co-housing communities and communes and people living in barter economies in those communities. Some of you may have lived like that at some time. Did anybody do that ever in your life? Sort of a big group house? Well, a lot of people are figuring out ways to do this now, and not just young people, but elders as well. You may smile if you have lived in community at the challenges, remembering the challenges of sharing small dwellings around a common kitchen or social space, maybe a dorm room. These projects of co-housing and communal living are often launched with a really romanticized notion of community, where all will pull their weight, that's the hope, and they will generously offer their skills and effort. But history demonstrates again and again that people are hard to live with. And putting down principles, writing an agreement, and developing covenants, posting a mission statement are all actually the easy part. The hard part is the actual living. What I think we really need to get at is a different attitude towards success and how to define it. What it means to be successful as we age, for instance. It can't only look like the big house and the boats and the multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement, or the big weddings, the kids with big corporate jobs or finance jobs. Or even if your kids are on social media watching influencers talk about their hauls. Have you heard this word, hauls? This is a big, big aspect of social media where somebody will get on and show their followers or whoever comes up on their feed their 19 Gucci bags that they got, and it's like, look at my haul. This is my Old Navy haul or my Shein haul, and it's 20 garments all made in factories, in sweatshops, destroying the planet, and they all get tossed because it's not sustainable. It ends up in the landfill. We have to cultivate and celebrate the coolness of opting out of that, of doing something different, of leaning into mutuality and doing without, because one doesn't need to be burdened with so many things. That has to be cool. Being someone or a community that embraces enoughness. This is part of why we in this church are looking so seriously at our budget, our expenditures, our endowment. No person or group can cultivate enoughness without looking honestly at their how muchness. It has to be assessed with honesty, plain talk about dollars and cents, energy, costs, benefits, all of it. This summer, I spent some time researching the Universalist and Unitarian utopian movements of the 1840s. And they were in Massachusetts. Now, the 1840s were also a time of real turmoil in the new United States. The high ideals of these projects were actually hilarious and endearing to me, because I didn't have to live under the conditions imposed by these starry-eyed founders, one of whom was Louisa May Alcott's father, the famously verbose, philosophically brilliant, and domestically useless Bronson Alcott. His dream community, called Fruitlands, because they were going to pretty much just live on fruit, was supposed to be a return to Eden, a place where all participants would share in the labor, and they would all live in reverence for the earth, to the extent that not only would they not eat animals or wear anything provided by animals, they would not use animals for labor on the farm either. I know. And several of the members of the Fruitlands Cooperative thought that it was even bad to eat root vegetables because they grew downward into the earth and they were therefore not aspirational. And you know what? I'm still trying to figure that one out. I don't know how that works. They wore only homespun linen fabrics, no constricting wool. Can you imagine thinking of wool as like an unsustainable textile, right? No metal, no, nothing like that, just homespun linen. If you read the correspondence between Bronson Alcott's wife, Abigail, and her uncle, Samuel May, now he was a Unitarian minister, and I feel close to him because he was one of my predecessors in the pulpit of First Parish in Norwell. And she would write to him, and he would write back, and there was some complaining going on there. I'm glad she had him. You would see the continuity of her complaints with the complaints that many women have to this day, along the lines of, he does all the talking and I do all the work. It is not shared labor. It's not equal. For instance, Bronson Alcott and the other founder of Fruitlands decided when the harvest had to be brought in that they would go to New York to recruit more people for the community. That's great timing. This woman, upon whom the saintly character of Marmee and Little Woman was based, was frustrated. She was cranky, justifiably. In her journal, Abby vents that the pious attitudes of the men of Concordia, which is the precursor to Fruitlands, most cruelly drove her from the enjoyment of her domestic life. And every time she makes a joke, she says, I am prone to indulge in occasional hilarity. She is, and I quote, frowned down into stiff quiet and peaceless order. The atmosphere is suffocating, and she looks back wistfully to her 5 months of freedom while Bronson was in England, raising money for his venture. She's tired of her diet of bread and water and hard apples that hurt her teeth. And I got all of this from a wonderful study by Richard Francis called Fruitlands, the Alcott Family and Their Search for Utopia. After Bronson dragged his family out to Fruitlands, and you can go visit, it's in Harvard, Mass., very beautiful, and almost starved them, Abigail finally said enough, and she moved the family members back to Concord. They were an eccentric bunch. Even the Shakers up the way thought them naive and a little bit weird. Okay, the Shakers. The entire venture of Fruitlands lasted just 7 months. They spent years raising money and preparing for it, all the think pieces, all the meetings, years. 7 months, complete, utter failure. After returning back home, Bronson Alcott took to his bed for months in deep depression and despair. And while I have sympathy for him, it brings me to realizing that Abigail, of course, during that long period, continued to carry the entire burden for the entire family while he was incapacitated by the grief of the failure of his idealist vision. The Alcott's poverty did give us one of our greatest American authors. But what a sad motivation for Louisa May Alcott to spend sleepless nights writing stories for sale because of the pinch of starvation. Bronson Alcott, he had beautiful moral commitments and values. He was a staunch abolitionist and an ecologist. He was a teacher of little children who used the Socratic method of inquiry with them because he respected their minds and their questions. But he was also inept and unable to deal with reality. So for me, he's a real cautionary tale for all of us who consider how we might adjust our habits of consumption and acquisition to need less, use less, share more, and give more He reminds us that you've got to put preparation behind the vision. Imagine going out to farm a steep pasture. I mean, it is steep hill in western Massachusetts, having carefully worked out your philosophy, but never having really learned how to farm. It's easy enough to laugh at the foibles of a small band of 19th century idealists. By the way, Brook Farm, which was started at the same time, around the same time in Roxbury, did very well. That's a whole other story. But they are our friends and can be our mentors in what not to do. What not to do? Well, a few things. Keep our aspirations in the form of concepts without any practical planning and preparing. What not to do? Expect a few people to do all the actual work. What not to do? Be too restrictive and righteous about what anyone is thinking, wearing, or eating. What not to do? Go into commitments until we actually know who's responsible for what and what the accountability is if they don't meet their responsibilities. What not to do? Be unaware of gender dynamics that persist to this day in individual and communal households. In times of crisis, people are surprisingly good at figuring out fast how to do without, because they have to. How to be creative in survival and maintaining even joy and a sense of enoughness. Much of that happens when people join together in community, which is something you're already doing by being here this morning, whether you've walked through the door for the first time or you've been here for a really long time. We have a good practice here, and we know the value and wealth of local relationships and of sourcing our skill set. As Robin Wall Kimmerer affirms, the prosperity of the community grows from the flow of relationships, not the accumulation of goods. Don't forget it. And I will leave you with another of her insights and invitations, which is the challenge is to cultivate our inherent capacity for gift economies without the catalyst of catastrophe. Right? Amen. So we are in prepping season, and I would venture to say a prepping era. We must not tighten and stiffen ourselves against anything that is to come, whether it be the inevitability of winter or the further breakdown of institutions and systems we had imagined we could rely on all our lives. We need our wits about us, strong backs, and keen senses to build skills, to teach others and our children, and to cultivate inner and external resources to benefit all. There are still berries dropping in buckets and the harvest to be gathered when it comes in. We will continue to name the world a gift.